Hi, I'm Jim, and I'm a cyclist. I hope some of you are too. We'll get to that next. I want to start with a couple questions. How many of you know how to ride a bike? Oh, that's an easy question. Everybody gets to raise their hand. All right, hold on. How many of you have ridden a bike in the past year? Just about everybody. I like this group. How many would say they've ridden more than 300 miles in the past year? Okay, I lost most of you. All right, now I know what I'm dealing with. I want you to think back to when you're learning to ride a bike. You may have been a little kid, or you may have been a big kid. But there was some skill you had to develop. It took some practice. You may have fallen a few times, that's okay. But what I really want you to think about is what that meant to you. It was kind of a rite of passage. You got to be a big kid because you could ride a bike. And think about what that meant to you. You could explore further. You could go faster. You could make new discoveries, all because you learned to ride a bike. So similar to what your experience may have been, I learned to ride a bike when I was 5 or 6 years old. And I started by riding up and down the street. And then I'd ride around the block. And then I'd ride further and further, and over the years, further and further. And eventually I started keeping track just out of curiosity. And I actually started keeping track about when I was college age, 1984, so don't do the math on that. So over the past 30-some years since I've been keeping records, I've actually logged over 100,000 miles riding a bike. Yes, passion for cycling, some would say obsession. A couple other things that have come out of my cycling is I got into the sport of triathlon. Everybody familiar with triathlon? Swim, bike, run. Also the sport of duathlon, not as well known, but a little bit easier because you don't have to swim, you just bike and run. And that's actually my favorite sport. In fact, I've competed in the national championships for duathlon on 3 different occasions. Kind of extreme, but it's just an expression of my interest in cycling and running. But probably the most unique or bizarre thing that has come out of my passion for cycling has been that I wrote a book. And while the basis for the book is cycling, on the surface it looks like a cycling book, the real underlying theme that I really don't necessarily state strongly in the book, but what inspired me and the reason I wrote it is about reflection. So what do I mean by reflection? Let's go talk to our friends at Merriam-Webster.com. They're always good for a definition. We've got 2 definitions from them. One is the consideration of some subject matter, idea, or purpose. Another definition of reflection is it's a thought, idea, or opinion formed, or a remark made as a result of meditation. Now what I want to bring your attention to are the 2 key verbs up there, the consideration and the meditation. This shows us that reflection is what? It's an internal process. It's thinking about something. It's not just writing something down. It's not just having the idea. It's thinking about it. It's considering it. It's meditating about it. A little bit deeper understanding of what's going on. And that's really where the benefits, sorry, I have to point at the room up there. There we go. The benefits of reflection. This is why you should reflect, or why I'm trying to encourage you to spend more time reflecting. These are benefits that I've found in my own experience that I'm going to be talking about, but also things that show up a lot. If you watch other TED Talks that talk about passion and reflection, if you read articles about passion or reflection, these are the kind of common themes that come out a lot. It helps transform ideas or experiences into lessons. It's what makes something a lesson. You learn from it by thinking about it. It helps you understand yourself in a deeper manner. The more you reflect on something, you understand why it means something to you. It's not just a surface understanding of what the words say. It's a deeper understanding of what it means to you. And it helps illuminate connections between things. Again, at the surface, some things may look disjointed, not connected. But once you start to understand them at a deeper level, you realize that the roots are connected. There's a lot of connection and relationship between things. So I want to demonstrate these points of reflection, or these benefits of reflection, by taking you down the road of reflection that led me from being a guy who rides a bike to being a guy who wrote a book. Saddleman. That was just a dramatic pause to build the tension and excitement. I can see you're all really excited about this. That's me up there in the corner, about 18, 19 years old, same age as maybe some of you in the audience. At the time, I belonged to a cycling club called the Cycling Saddle. It was about that time that I also was a counselor on a bike trip for mid-highs. And so the little younger kids, I wouldn't say I was terribly old at that point, called me Saddleman, which to me sounded like a nickname, like a superhero, so I took it because of my shirt that said Saddleman on it. So anyway, I was the counselor on this bike trip, and one of the things that we had to do on the bike trip as counselors, not just ride our bikes and guide people on the road, but each night we had a camp activity. You've all maybe been to a camp where you sit around the campfire and you talk about stuff. Well, that was one of my responsibilities. So of course, being an 18 or 19-year-old kid, I didn't have anything planned at all, just started talking. But what I ended up talking about was kind of reflecting on what we were doing out there, not just riding our bike from point A to point B, but we were out there in the country seeing the fields, seeing the farms, looking at the trees. And a lot of these kids that were on the trip were from the suburbs or the city. They hadn't spent a lot of time in that environment. So I wanted them to understand that, cycling isn't just about getting from here to there. It's about appreciating where you are, looking at things a little bit differently because you're looking at them from a bike. And that was really kind of profound to myself. Like I said, I really hadn't planned on saying all of that. It's just what came out of me in a stream of consciousness. But it was that moment of reflection that I was taking in getting some of those thoughts to process a little bit deeper. And that kind of struck me. I thought, well, that was really cool. I wonder where that came from. But it was really enjoyable and helped me appreciate things more. And the part that really struck me was that after I got done with my little campfire talk, 2 or 3 of the kids came up to me afterwards and said that they really enjoyed it too. And I thought, well, that's pretty significant if little kids are willing to come up to me and say, well, that was really cool, man, what you're saying. So it stuck with me. I mean, I'd like to say it was a life-changing moment for me, but I was 18, 19 years old. I was really more concerned about what was for snack time. But it did stick with me. It was kind of a seed that was planted for the future in the value of reflection, as I speak dramatically and slowly. Which leads me up to another moment in time I want to share with you, which I call, relates to my rules of triathlon. Now, one of the tips I learned early in the sport of triathlon is a way to keep yourself invested in the race and focused in the race is to put a little saying or something on your handlebars. So that's a picture of my handlebars viewed from above. Now, if you think about it, those of you who know triathlon, you spend a lot of time on your aero bars, kind of hunched over like this and look at where you're staring directly down at your handlebars. And you can see, actually your stem, technically, for those of you cyclists. You can see motivational statement that you would tape there. In my case, I came up with 4 rules of triathlon. I would call them my 4 rules of triathlon. It's really become a mantra for me. I still use it for every race. Don't drown, relax, go fast, have fun. Now, obviously, if I'm on the bike and I look down and I see don't drown, I know I've already been a success. Because if I made it to that point, I haven't drowned yet. So that's good. I'm always positive, reinforcement. But those are the things that really would help me, or do continue to help me, perform my best in a race. I figure if I can do those to any level of degree, I can be satisfied and happy with what I've done. But the part that relates to reflection is that those were on my bike initially because of the racing. They were the focus I used during my race. But they were still there when I would be riding around any other time. And that's when I had more time to think about what they really meant. And I started to look at them in a deeper manner and understand them in a deeper way. And that's what created that deeper understanding that also led to the connections with other areas. For example, don't drown isn't really necessarily just about not drowning. It's more about not being afraid to jump in and do something. Don't let fear hold you back. Kind of like doing a TED Talk. You have to invest yourself. Don't be afraid to do it. Just get in there and do it. And that, as I learned, as I thought about it, applied to racing, to triathlon, but it also applied to other things in life. And in fact, it's pretty much my mantra for living life. Those 4 rules, when you understand them at a deeper level, really become a way of looking at life. They become your life lessons. So that's all through the power of reflection. So once I noticed this rather blank slide, oh, there we are. Hopefully I didn't click it too many times. I started having these ideas bouncing around in my head more and more because I thought, well, this is really cool. I can take something I know about cycling, which is my passion, which I love to do, and get to learn about it in a deeper level by thinking about it some more, and then being able to come across a greater understanding of it. But what do I do with all these ideas that are rattling around in my brain? I was inspired by the writing of Robert Pirsig here. Now, he wrote the book Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. I'll let you exercise your other arm. How many people have heard that book? No, have to have read it. That's my next question. But how many have heard of it? All right, a few. That's good. A few of you have probably read it. If you don't know, those of you who don't know, you've probably heard a similar title in a lot of things. It's kind of just a catchy phrase. It's a book about philosophy, metaphysics, quality, value, all kinds of these really complex, abstract ideas, but he tells about them and relates them through the metaphor of riding a motorcycle and maintaining a motorcycle. And that was real inspiration to me. I thought, well, I've got the same kind of thing going on in my head, more or less. Maybe not to that quality, philosophy, metaphysics level, but at least a personal understanding of life lessons. And if he can do it with a motorcycle, maybe I can do it with a bicycle. I'd never written anything. I was not an English major, I'll admit that. But I did some writing, and I thought it was an interesting challenge, but I had no idea where to start. So that's when I came across his second book, Lila, and it's really a continuation of the same type of thing. But the one thing I want to mention about Lila is at one point in there, he talks about how he gathered his thoughts, literally, in a card catalog drawer. He would write out thoughts, ideas, lessons, whatever, on a card and put them in this card catalog drawer. And then from time to time, he'd go through and pull out the cards and look through them and start to shuffle through them as a way of reflecting and gathering and coordinating his thoughts. And I thought that was a brilliant idea, and I decided to do the same thing. So over the course of 1 or 2 years, I would slowly dump all of these ideas that were rattling around in my head when I was riding my bike onto 3x5 cards, put them in a card catalog file, and then started to organize them and see how they just kind of shifted themselves and what associated with what. Again, looking for the connections and looking for the relationships. And what I ended up with was a book. Now, that's just because I took that personal challenge of Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance and turned it into like riding a bike. Same idea. You'll notice that the name there is different. My name is Elsenheimer, that says Edwards. It's really me. Originally, I wrote the book for myself, but then when I decided to start sharing it out to other people, I used a shorter last name just to make it easier on them. A lot easier to remember Edwards. But the whole exercise for me was that reflection of taking those ideas, taking all those thoughts, processing them, and then coming out with something else at the end, which was the book. It was the collection of my thoughts and ramblings and whatever. But the important part in the middle was the reflection. So I'm not saying you have to write a book, although, hey, if you want to, I'm not going to stop you. The idea that I want to get across is reflection's valuable, but it takes a couple stages, or 3 stages. One, collecting and gathering your thoughts, which I did in a card catalog drawer. You could do in Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, whatever works for you. And then processing those through the insight, and then just so you have record of that, outputting it somehow. I wrote a book, you could write a blog, you could do something with your Facebook page, you could do whatever. But it's that whole exercise that gives you that value. But I do have a caveat here. Reflection is not an act of social media. That is to say, just gathering your thoughts in social media or sharing out your results in social media is not the reflection. The part that's reflection is that internal process. What were the 2 words that I pointed out in the definitions at the beginning? Who was taking notes? Consideration and meditation. Yeah, that internal process. Or as I kind of summarize it here, ponder and personalize. Those are the keys to reflection. Think about it. What does it mean? How could you interpret that? And perhaps more importantly, personalize. What does it mean to you? What do you think about it? It's not just enough to read somebody's tweet and say, wow, that's cool, and pass it on to somebody else. That's not reflection. Reflection is, why do I think that's cool? What can I learn from that? How can I apply that? It's that pondering and personalizing. And as I've tried to show, you can do that with all kinds of stuff. Experiences, like riding a bike. Thoughts, like rules of triathlon, or whatever you happen to come across in whatever you do. Or your passions. For me, it was my passion for cycling. I just took a deeper look at it and filled a card file with it and came out with these results that ended up being a book. So it's really that whole process. It can happen at different levels, but there's great value. All of those benefits that I talked about at the beginning come out because you're spending the time to think about it. So to help you practice a little bit, with your reflection, I have a closing thought. This kind of sums up what I've been trying to express here, but also gives you a moment to practice with your own reflection. So consider this, or meditate on this. You don't have to be a great person or do great things to learn great lessons and gain great insight. It's like riding a bike. It takes a little practice, but once you develop the skill, your potential for exploration and personal discovery is limitless. Think about it. Thank you.